Okay, we're almost near the end. We'll create our last couple functions to add and delete items to and from the database here. So underneath the getItems function in the global functions area, we'll just go ahead and add our new functions. So I'll call this add item. First thing I'm going to do is get our input values. And so we're going to create a couple of variables. The first one will be input1, and that'll use an input get text action to retrieve the value from the input object called name. And then I'm going to cut and paste that to a new line, and I'm just going to rename the variable to input2 and the label to number. So that gets the values from both of our input objects and puts them into variables. We can now send those to our script. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll up here. What we've got to do now is set up a table again containing any values to be sent to our PHP script. So first thing we'll do is say action equals add. Second thing we'll say is name equals input1. That's our variable input1. And number equals our variable input2. So we've sent three variables here. Action, name, and number with their according values. We don't need to get a return value from our HTTP script this time, so we can just go ahead and type it directly in here. The location, of course, is first of our script, so we've got localhost / phonebook.php, or wherever your script is at, you would type in there the name of our table, which is my values, and then we're going to put in our method, which is submit web get. Okay, so that's the same as before, and we'll just use the same default values as before here. So a timeout of 20, port 80, nil and nil for authorization and proxy data. And then that takes care of our actual adding of the value to the database. It's now added. Now what we need to do is do a little bit of final formatting. So we need to clear our input fields and refresh our list box. And we do that by using input set text actions on both of our input fields, set to nothing, so empty quotation marks. So we'll say input set text name and then some empty quotation marks. I'll cut and paste that to a new line and change the label to number. And that's going to clear out both of our input boxes. And then we'll just call our getItems function, and that goes ahead and refreshes our list box, including the item which has just been added to the database. So that's why we created the getItems function first, because it's going to be part of both of these functions. Okay, let's create a function now to delete items. Okay, so we'll declare it. I'm going to call this function delete item. The first thing we need to do is figure out which item in the list box the user has currently selected. So we're going to say result equals list box get selected. Now what this is going to do is it's going to create a table, not a variable, called result, and that's going to contain the data that we need. Specify the name of our list box, which is list, and we can go ahead and act upon that data. Now what we need to do is we need to get the item and the item type. So it's not good enough to just know which item is selected. We also have to know if it's a name or a number in order to properly deal with the data. So the item type is going to be list box get item data. So it's going to get the corresponding data for the item, in this case the label, and we're going to set that so that it acts upon our list box named list, and so that it uses the index number 1 of the result table. Okay, so now basically what we've got here, to explain this a little clearer, we've created a table named result which contains the data that we need. The data which we want is contained in slot number 1 of the table named result, so that's why we've indexed it using a 1 in square brackets there. So now we've got our item type. We just need to find out our item text. Okay, so item equals list box get item text, and again we'll just use the same thing. It's our list box named list. Oops. And we're going to use the index of result, index 1. Okay, so that gives us our item and our item text, and we can go ahead now and act upon that. Now we have all the data we need to go ahead and delete the item from the database. So the first thing we need to do is set up a table of values again, because we're going to be using an HTTP submit action, and we're going to say action equals delete type equals item type, and ID equals item. Okay, so we've passed three variables again to our PHP script, this time the action variable, the type variable, and the ID variable, and we've installed the appropriate values into those variables. So we don't need to get a return action from our, or return value rather, from our HTTP action this time. So again, we're just going to go ahead and type it right in. We'll set up our script location. And then we're going to set up our table name, my values. And again, we'll go ahead and use the same default values we used before, which is the get method. So submit web get 20, 80, nil, nil. Okay, so we've used the same timeout, port, and authorization settings as we used before, and we're basically done with this action. Now, this function has already deleted the item from the database. The only thing that we have to do now is call the getItems function, and that will refresh our list box. Okay, so let's quickly review what we've done here. We've created two more functions, one to add items, one to delete items, and in the add item function what we've done is we've retrieved the values from the input field, sent those to our PHP script, and then cleared out our input fields and refreshed our list box. For our delete item, what we did was we first figured out which item they had selected, then we got the corresponding item text and item data from that item, and then we sent that to our PHP script for deletion from our database, and then we refreshed our list box. Okay, so let's go on to the next lesson where we'll complete our project by installing our function calls onto our label objects, and then we'll go on to testing our application.